Ayan, ayan na talaga. There we are. Finally, ito na, press con na by our President-elect, incoming President, Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. Wow, ito na, yung mga nagsisink in na talagang patapos na ang reign ni outgoing President Rodrigo Rua Duterte. Ito na, paalis na talagang si PRRD, no? Wow, that was something. Of course, medyo busy tayo kanina, pero I made time to go through the press conference, take down notes para meron tayong pang point of discussion. So I'm working on a number of academic and non-academic stuff, so medyo 100% focus ako doon. But I said, dapat talaga magkaroon tayo ng proper analysis ng itong press con na to. I think this was not just any press conference. This is the kind of press conference that gives you an idea of what to expect, not only for the next 6 months, but for the next 6 years or even more, no? So, very important yung event today kung saan nagbigay ng press conference ang President-elect natin, si Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. Now, let me just give you a warning. If you're here to hear bashing of someone, partisan kind of take, etc., please feel free to tune out. Hindi namin kayo kailangan. Alright, if you're here to look at the most objective possible, non-partisan analysis of ano yung nangyayari sa ating bansa, please stay in, please tune in, please support us. Okay, so let's be very, very clear about it. To be honest, medyo kabado ako because I have very mixed feelings. I'm intellectually completely unsurprised with everything that is happening. And by the way, just to signpost, itong mga discuss natin today, no? First, analyzing, medyo discursive analysis and also stylistic analysis ng press conference ng incoming president natin, Ferdinand Marcos Jr. Pangalawa, dun sa Unity Cabinet. So we have at least one former cabinet member under the Pinoy administration, God bless the soul of our former president, who will be included in the coming cabinet. So the unity talk may in fact be operationalized in actual policy and cabinet formation. I'll discuss that more. Mayroon tayong OPLE, among other people to also discuss, progressive people in this cabinet. So very intense things have been happening. At pangatlo also yung diskusyon ni incoming President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. with our foreign and international partners, including talks with ambassadors of Japan, South Korea, and India, and of course, Charge d'Affaires of the United States. Wow, this is... Whew. Okay, now before going to these points and breaking them down one by one, let me just say this. This is... Alam mo yun? Please don't hate me for saying this, okay? Maybe this is not a proper analogy. But I haven't been married or anything like that. But probably people have been married and then, eto na, kakasal na sila and all of that. Alam mo yung may sense of excitement and anxiety or anxiousness? Or, yet let me use another analogy. It's like, na in love ka sa tao na parang feeling mo hindi mo naman siya bet talaga nung una. Or you have doubts with this person pero at the same time parang you want to give it a chance. Alam mo yung ganun? At the same time, you're fearing na it might go wrong, right? It might go off the rail. I'm not sure that perfectly captures how I feel about the situation, but honestly, I have very mixed feelings, and not necessarily in a good or bad thing. I mean, it's really mixed for a reason, right? And I'll try to break that down soon. Now, wow. Okay, now, intellectually, I'm totally unsurprised with what's happening. So the mixed feeling is really just on the level of subjective sentimentality. But on the level of intellect and analysis, I'm completely unsurprised with what we've been seeing. Check my interviews right and left. Ano yung sinabi ko? Pag si Marcos Jr. nanalo, he'll be a much more subdued, urbane, dignified, presidential version of the outgoing president, PRRD. Right? That's exactly what I've been saying. I said, Yes, maybe hindi siya nag-graduate sa Oxford or Wharton, but he has been exposed to basic policy sciences. Nag-PPE siya sa Oxford, nag-Wharton School siya. So he may not have graduated, but he has basic literacy in macroeconomic and policy discussions. And we could clearly see that dito sa press conference. He felt very comfortable discussing yung economic issues, yung time niya as governor, discussion nila with Arsenio Balisacan, we shall discuss later on more, yung discussion nila with ambassadors from different countries, the need for the Philippines to be an active partner in the emerging Indo-Pacific economic framework, so on and so forth. You can just see how different Marcos Jr. is from outgoing President Rodrigo Roa Duterte. Now, I understand President Duterte has this kind of inexplicable, or not actually very inexplicable, charisma sa maraming tao. Kasi relatable siya, tapos yung mga midnight speech niya, medyo sabog, hindi mo alam kung saan pumunta, but natatawa yung tao, natutuwa ang tao, etc. You're not getting any of that from incoming President Marcos Jr. He'll be extremely different. He'll be more like his father rather than tatay pagdating sa demeanor, right? And the way he handles the dignity of the presidential office, right? I mean, you could clearly see how confident he felt discussing policy issues, how at home he felt discussing his conversations with key figures who will be emerging in his cabinet, with potential candidates, with world leaders. And this is it. I mean, after 6 years of Tatay Digong presidency, I'll be honest, this is something you will miss. I mean, yung someone who's your president and speaks and acts, well, at least speaks and carries himself like a president. Again, no offense kay Mayor Digong, but man, I mean, you want to see a president who carries himself like a president or herself like a president, right? So again, if you're here to just hear me bashing someone because you didn't vote for that person or because you think I didn't vote for that person, I'm sorry, I'm not going to give that to you here. We're here to analyze things as they are. And my honest opinion is that that was a very presidential, dignified, comprehensive, calm, subdued, and very confident press conference by incoming President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. And yes, nakakamiss yung ganun. I'm not talking about Marcos Jr. per se. I'm talking about yung demeanor na ganun, yung presidential dignified demeanor. Kasi over the past 6 years, wala, naging vlogger tayo dahil, I mean, kung ganyan ang presidente mo, di ba? Tapos supporters niya, yung iba, ganyan. Tapos vlogger. This side of me cannot jive eh, di ba? But after listening to that press conference, this side of me is back and 100%, right? 100%. Yes, the Ferrari can now drive the road, right? That's what I'm saying. I may not agree with how the road is made. I may not be excited about the lay of the land and the circuit, but the Ferrari can drive again because you have a president who speaks and acts like a president, at least so far, right? Now, obviously, as I said, it's too early to say how things will pan out in the next 6 months. No one knows. I don't think even Bongbong knows what's going to happen in the next 6 years. He'll try to do things as he believes they should, they should be and they should, in what direction they should go. But, my, nakakamiss yung ganun, presidential dignified, presentation by a Philippine head of state, right? So you may disagree with Ferdinand Marcos Jr. You may not like Ferdinand. You may even hate Marcos Jr. You may not have voted for Marcos Jr., etc. But guys, hindi ba nakakamiss yung may presidente ka na ganyan magsalita? Diba? Yung may dignity, may confidence, subdued, can seamlessly shift from one topic to the other. Right? Again, please, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying, oh, napakagaling ganun. I'm just saying this is what you expect from a president. Right? And this is what I didn't get from a certain person over the past 6 years. I mean, it's just... So honestly, kami, coming from journalism, academic world, etc., we had to adjust, diba? Kasi imagine you're like this, and then yung president mo, 1 a.m. yung mga address niya, tapos napakasabog, diba? But here, finally, you have a speech, 3 p.m., 4 p.m., matino. Wala pang 40 minutes, tapos ng conference. Klaro, na-cover lahat ng issues. May flow. Medyo seamless yung transition between different languages. Hindi yung all over the place. So, kaya nga parang, wow, I mean, finally, someone who speaks like a president again is there, right? Which is something that I just realized how much I missed. Obviously, of course, I kino-cover natin yung leaders ng ibang bansa, di ba? Pero pinag-usapan kasi natin yung sarili natin presidente, di ba? So, the Marcoses have a certain notoriety, reputation, etc. Given na yan. But it's important that you conduct yourself like a president because you have to respect and carry the dignity of the office. That office of the presidency, panon pa ng Aguinaldo yan, di ba? People have sacrificed their life for that office. Ilang Pilipinong namatay, nagsakripisyo para makamit natin yung independence natin, no? From the Spanish, from the Americans, and from new colonialism, so on and so forth, right? So the dignity of office is extremely important. And I really want to see our presidents, whoever, to uphold the dignity of office. Na hindi purong bardagulan. As I said, you want to go bardagulan, you want to go trash talk, be my guest. Wala akong problema, right? But that's not my preference. My preference is a dignified politics, right? My preference is a dignified, at least caring of yourself as a president. So all of those things I said about the Marcoses, about how there will be an improvement on Duterte in at least certain aspects, there we are. We saw it. And di ba sinabi ko ni sa inyo, during the presidential elections, dahil sa experience nila noong 2016, because kung maalala niyo guys, in 2016, Bongbong Marcos was leading. And then yung debate nangyari, lalo yung debate sa UST. I think si Pia Ontiveros yung host nun. And then si Lenny and all went after Bongbong. After that, his numbers kind of dipped, or at least his momentum was nipped in the bud. So their strategy was protect the lead, make sure he crosses the line. But now that he has crossed the line, much better than they expected. Boom, 58% of the votes at least, right? 31 million votes. Now nakikita mo confident si Bongbong Marcos. He's confident to take questions. He's confident to answer. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be your FDR or your Abraham Lincoln or your Obama, whatever, or Zelensky. But you can see how much he has changed from that kind of strategy of keeping away from media, it's all that. And then now that he has won, he's showing the presidential side of him. And this is the thing with the Marcoses. They're multidimensional people. They can be multiple things at the same time. I mean, they're chameleons, right? It's just part of they are a political family, right? They know how to play their game. And they spend time in Malacanang longer than any other political dynasty in our history, as far as I know at least, right? So, I mean, this is something to keep in mind. So that's the first thing I want to say. Cool, very cool, calm, composed, collected, subdued, comprehensive. The second thing, which I think is of course more important, so the first one was more stylistic, etc. But my goodness, after 6 years of Tatay Digong, stylistics matters to me. All right, it matters. Number 2, yung cabinet. So, interestingly, pinag-usapan natin itong issue ng inclusiveness of the cabinet. Was it Napoleon who said something like, you judge a leader by the kind of people he surrounds himself with, right? Or herself with, of course. Wala pang PC nung panon ni Napoleon, right? So that's why yung composition ng cabinet is extremely important. And in this case, of course, yes, we kind of mock the whole unity because napaka-vague. But now is your chance, Mr. Oncoming President-elect, to show what this unity is all about. And one of the best ways to show that early on, and hopefully this can be sustained over time, is yung appointments mo sa cabinet. So as we have discussed, there have been some issues with some of the key cabinet departments, and some people haven't accepted it or turned it down, etc. But we have some big announcement today. Nalaman natin na si Professor at former NEDA, Chief panon pa ni President Aquino yan, Arsenio Balisacan, tinanggap niya po yung position, again, to head NEDA under the Marcos administration. So that would be quite interesting. Someone who served in the cabinet of both Aquino and the Marcoses. That would be quite something. And that's the embodiment of a technocrat. No, not an enabler, not a sellout, but a technocrat. Professor Balisacan is one of the best professors there in UP School of Economics. We know that. We've known him. He has excellent work in terms of agricultural economics. Marami siyang alam dun sa agriculture, dun sa issue ng food security. At saka dahil sa experience niya dati sa NEDA, marami siyang alam also in terms of yung coordination sa pagitan ng national government and local governments and making sure na meron tayong inclusive development all across our country. Pinag-usapan din of course ni Ferdinand Marcos Jr. na nung time na governor siya ng Ilocos Norte, he had extensive discussions of course with Balisacan in different capacities, etc. Um, and that he appreciates the fact, well, mukhang nung senador din siya, at least Balisacan was, I'm just gonna get some of those facts double check, no? But you can clearly see how comfortable Marcos Jr. feels around technocrats, that he can discuss with technocrats all of these issues na kailangan natin in terms of our development agenda. Nalaman din natin dun sa newly formed department, no, for OFWs. And to put things into context, the OFW phenomenon really picked up during the Marcos dictatorship era dahil bumabaksak na yung economy at some point. Let's see how the son will handle this. But if you look at it, mukhang Ma'am Ople, no? I think will be the one who will take charge of it. I saw a post by, I think, her daughter or something about this, along these lines. So, yep. So we're double checking that, no? Yeah, na mukhang natanggap na ni, I think, Ma'am Ople, di ba? Itong position ng with the OFW issue, no? And then, of course, we have also other figures that were, I think, in the Aquino administration serving in other positions who will also serve probably cabinet, sub-cabinet, or secondary cabinet positions under Aquino. So, there's a lot. There's a lot that is still going on na pwede natin pag-usapan. Now, of course, that was important. That announcement was important because early this morning, nalaman natin na si Congressman Remulla tinanggap niya yung position ng Justice Secretary. And of course, that was met with a lot of criticism from one side, especially people have concerns about red tagging, of course, yung concerns about ABS-CBN, considering the voting record of Congressman Remulla dun sa franchise issue ng ABS-CBN, among others. But you can clearly see that perhaps Bongbong Marcos is trying to build as inclusive as cabinet as possible and not just fill it up with partisans or people are just going to toe the line or take a overly politicized direction in terms of key issues in our country. Kasi yun na nagiging problema natin, especially dun sa, alala niyo yung mga kabinete ni Digong, yung sila Aguirre, yung all of these people, di ba? I mean, and you could clearly see how politicized was the Justice Secretary position back then, di ba? So we hope to see that this cabinet will act much more professionally, less shenanigans and blind partisanship and political stunts, and more ways to really find common ground para ayusin natin itong bansa natin. Now, again, we are gonna discuss about more issues tomorrow and the coming days. Mahaba-haba pa. I'm not gonna preempt ano yung maging position ni incoming Justice Secretary Remulla on ABS-CBN and red tagging issue now that he's gonna be the Justice Secretary. I mean, it was one thing what he did as a congressman. Now let's see how he acts as a Justice Secretary. Now, I think there was a balance, and I think it was very important to see that Bongbong Marcos actually emphasized na yung mga kinukuha niyang tao from different camps, no? Especially from sila Balisacan, etc., or people who are technocratic or are non-partisan. So you could see that Bongbong Marcos was very proud of that. And I won't be surprised that he's trying to get people maybe like that, at least into half of the key positions na hindi pa na-fill up. DOF, Department of Finance, Cesar Purisimo reportedly has been considered for that. DND, Department of Foreign Affairs, right? Let's see. I mean, as I said, those are very important positions at kailangan natin hindi partisan yung mga mag-fill up dyan at mga people talaga who are professional, respected in the field, and who can inspire confidence in not only a unity cabinet, but also a cabinet of A-listers, no? So, as I said, let's see. But again, I'm not gonna say everything is perfect and fine and I'm being sold. This has been sold to me. Hindi naman ganon. But I'm just saying you have to give credit where credit is due. And in this case, we're seeing some positive signals here and there. I'm not privy to backroom negotiations and other cabinet positions, so I'm not gonna say much until I'm quite sure about it. But pansin niyo, yung mga sinabi natin about some of the issues well, nakatotoo. So mukhang tama yung ating information on some of the issues and our processing of those information. Lastly, we also saw how this was not Tatay Digong style. I love China, love China, love Putin, etc. This was a very balanced speech, emphasizing actually the first person na tumawag kay Bongbong Marcos, and Bongbong Marcos actually confirmed that, was Biden, President Biden of the United States. They had a good call. It was a cordial conversation. And of course, there was call also from China and other countries, from Prime Minister Kishida of Japan. And na-emphasize ni Bongbong Marcos na we look forward to having fruitful, constructive relationship around the world. Na-emphasize din niya na because the gap was so significant, the victory so thorough, there's no issue with legitimacy of this administration, which tells you he cared about that issue, yung legitimacy ng kanyang administration. He has already visited Australia, right? He is back. So he had conversation apparently with outgoing Prime Minister Morrison, no, natalo lang the other day in Australia. Interestingly, of course, Australia, nakita natin yung panahon na si Marcos nandun, biglang natalo mga conservatives for the first time in 10 years? So bumalik na yung mga liberal Democrats, the Labour Party in this case, somewhere between Social Democratic and Liberal Democratic, to power. So that's quite interesting to see. But you could see na Marcos really could recall very key items discussed with each cabinet. For instance, yung issue ng IT, information technology, infrastructure, and yung Bataan nuclear power plant. We'll discuss that more because I have a very detailed stance on the issue of nuclear energy, especially nuclear, yung BNPP. Nako po, pwede natin pag-usapan yan. I'm not gonna go into detail, but it's nice to see that he really very much kept things in mind. What were the points of discussion? It was quite transparent. Ano yung pwede niyang, ano yung mga pinag-usapan niya, at ano yung mga terms of engagement with South Korea. Diniscuss in yung Japan, and of course Japan's push for the Philippines to play a bigger role in the Indo-Pacific Economic Initiative of President Biden. And also, of course, Japan is a big player in the Philippines in terms of infrastructure investments, in terms of ODA, Official Development Assistance. That was good. And then also with India, he recalled some key points from his discussions, including development of the agricultural sector, making sure na mas bumata yung mga ating mga magsasaka, at hindi Cynthia Villar style yung intervention, very professional intervention, at saka paano magbukas ng account in an affordable way. So there's some things that we can learn actually from India. Very big democracy, also a troubled democracy. But it seems the conversation with the Indian ambassador went quite well. And there are a thing or two we can pick up from our Indian counterparts in terms of making sure grassroots level we can help yung mga ating mga kababayan who have been ignored or haven't been getting their fair share of the deal since the reintroduction of democracy. That was interesting. Alam natin yung tatay din ni, the late President Marcos also was very big on the issue of agriculture. Now, we can debate about how successful it was, but a lot of irrigation projects actually happened during the time, no? So in fairness, now, obviously Marcos wants to play into that, and gusto niya pag-usapan itong issue at yung kahulugan, no? At kahalagaan ng pag-develop ng ating agricultural sector. So again, and then of course, also discussions with, so parang walang meeting with the Chinese ambassador yet, but there were discussions also with the American charge d'affaires, and he emphasized yung issues ng development assistance and other sorts of cooperation. In fact, na-emphasize ni Bongbong Marcos na with US yung pinakamaraming pinag-usapan, obviously because of the special nature of the relationship. So then again, this is very, very different doon sa Tatay Digong style of approach, cabinet speech, etc., whatever you want to call it, right? Now, again, this is not to say everything is perfect. This is not to say this cabinet is wow, no. But what I'm saying is that we are at least seeing some steps in the right direction. Not fully, but some steps in the right direction. And we have to acknowledge it, right? And not to be blindly partisan about things if ever you're not with the Marcos side. And at the same time, if you're pro-Marcos, let's not also exaggerate this and say that was like, brilliant and all of that. Like, that was standard presidential performance. And I missed seeing that after a long time analyzing Tatay Digong. No offense to Tatay Digong, but this is just something we have been missing. All right? Okay. Ayan na. Seryoso na talaga si Ricardo ngayon. Kasi back na tayo into our Ferrari mode, di ba? Wala na patapos na si tatay. So, I hope we can have more serious discussions like that. Kasi nag-adjust tayo. Kung presidente mo ganyan, tapos ng seryoso mo, hindi tugma, di ba? So, alright. Now, you could have imagined if Lenny were the president, you could also see much more dignified. approach by me in terms of analyzing our administration. I'm just saying, right? Now, hindi ko alam kung si Sara naging presidente, ibang usapan na yan, alright? Okay, alright. Parang walang nag-star masyado sa akin, so obviously yung mga dito hindi natuwa sa mga discussion natin. Sa kutob ko yung mga dito hindi natutuwa pag may sinasabi tayo na hindi negative masyado kay Marcos. Bahala kayo, bias kayo. Alright? Salamat pa rin dun sa mga nakikinig sa atin at saka mga sumusuporta sa atin. Ayan, may isa dyan, si Katniss Crady ay medyo nega pa ng nega kanina. Sige, ikaw na. Kayo ng tama. Sige, lahat mali. Lahat mali. Kayo lang tama. Ganyan naman tayo eh. Yan ang problema sa ating bansa. Yan ang problema sa ating bansa. If yung ating manok ay hindi nanalo, lahat ng gagawin ng isa ay sisirain natin, ininega natin. Diba? Malaking problema po yan. You cannot run a country like that, diba? Madali tayo na popularize. Parang, we hate our rivals so much, we forget that we actually have enemies abroad that we have to deal with, right? Kung mahina tayong bansa, if we're polarized, we're divided, we're just blindly partisan, the whole country is gonna suffer. And the whole country is gonna be vulnerable to foreign predation. Alright, so let's be very clear about it. We got serious problems. And in fairness kay Bongbong Marcos, he didn't mention South China Sea and West Philippines Sea, probably not to hurt the feelings of China yet. But he discussed at this climate change, which is also a very, very important issue, and which was the crux of his discussion with our allies and friends, including America and Japan, right? So I think President Marcos himself, President-elect Marcos, also acknowledges we have some existential issues to deal with as a country. So we cannot mess around. Hindi tayo pwede mag-clown show, amateur hour, nonsense, right? Hindi tayo pwede maging experimental. Let me just say, siguro